Mr. Fuller, can you hear me? All right, good. I don't have all my voice. So, but it's okay. Well, you'll let me know. Stephanie, you'll let me know. There are two things in this passage today I want to talk about. The first thing is in the initial verse. There you go. We know that the whole creation has been groaning as if in labor pains till now. And not only creation, but we ourselves. But we ourselves. All that lives, laboring like it wants to give birth to something. That there's something deep inside us that wants out. Just like a flower wants to open its petals to the sun, just like a puppy's tongue wants to attach to some skin. There is something inside us that wants out. I think there's something inside us that belongs to God, and it wants to return to God. We are bearing love energy that groans and yearns and hankers to be released. You've heard a tummy growl. Feed me. Have you ever heard a soul groan? Let me out. I want to connect. I don't want to just be inside. Well, how do we give that thing deep inside us back to God? One way we do is through worship. Praise releases that thing inside us that belongs to God. And you can, I can't sing this morning, I don't have my full voice, but if you've ever had the experience of singing with a big group of people and you're just adding your voice to the chorus, you can feel you are pouring praise back into an ocean. We also give love energy back to God through service and through love. We all have a measure of creativity. The same creativity that led to the creation, that led to light. And we were made to give it away. There's something inside us, we were made to give it away and share with each other. We need a hug. We were built that way. We need a hand. We were made incomplete, and we were made with something that wants to be let out. Oh, there's an old, stale, tired joke about kids who have nothing better to do, and they call the store and say, "Have you got Prince Albert in a can?" And what's the answer? Well, then let him out. That doesn't even make sense anymore. But kids would not know what that means. There's something inside us that belongs to God and belongs to each other. If we do not let it out, something really dangerous happens, and there's a special word in the physician's desk reference. If that groaning is bottled up too long, we wither and shrink and go through a process known as Grinchification. Grinchification. But there's something else in this passage. Let's go to the next. No, it's right there. Yeah, John italicized it. We wait for adoption. You're waiting for adoption. A friend told me about an orphanage in India. The name of the orphanage, Children of the King. Home. Children of the King. The message was to each of these, you are the child of royalty, even though on the surface it seemed they had no one. Waiting for adoption. You know, the circle of life eventually makes all of us orphans. Eventually, we all become orphans. We never outgrow the need for parental love. How many of us can remember the only time we ever saw, or the first time we ever saw, our stoic fathers cry? Was it a funeral? And yeah, I mean, we're waiting for adoption. What was Paul waiting for? Why did Paul feel like he was an orphan? He was parentless. He was waiting. Paul lived with a deep burden of guilt. Because Paul, before he met Christ, had been a heresy hunter. He felt it was the right thing to do to find people who were converting to Christianity from Judaism and have them executed. Paul had blood on his hands. Paul lived with a deep burden of guilt. What's your orphanhood? What wound? What need? Is there some guilt? Is there an addiction? Is there some shame? Is there a burden deep inside you waiting for a parent to come? For the acceptance and security of unconditional love? What are you waiting for with the same longing that a child in an orphanage carries in his or her heart? Are you waiting in your widowhood? Are you waiting in your lonelyhood? You know, Paul worked so hard. Paul had been a super Pharisee. That's what led him to, in this misguided attempt to stamp out Christian faith. He had been a super Pharisee, but then he became a super apostle and super theologian. And eventually, so the story goes, he became a super martyr. I mean, Paul worked hard. Paul was a spiritual athlete. Paul had stories. He's like the Christian Odysseus, traveling all over the Mediterranean, snake bites, shipwrecks, getting in jail, getting out of jail. Paul worked very hard. Paul was like the little girl in the orphanage. And daily she made her bed and cleaned her plate and finished her homework and tried to stay perfect so her new family would drive up the next weekend and take her away. Working so hard to be adopted. But we know that Paul eventually discovered that you can't work hard enough to have that sense of being adopted. He finally learned that you can only accept it, just fall into it. You don't strain, you let go and discover that there was this loving God there all the time who wanted to hold you and that by grace you're saved, not by works. We're all orphans. We're all waiting for adoption. Now, the final thing to say, though, about this theme is this. Why should we be hopeful that there is someone there to heal us and fill us and adopt us? Well, you know, there are two sides to every adoption. Paul's phrase wants us to identify with the child in the orphanage who's waiting that maybe the new family will come and see her and pick her out and take her home. But the grown-ups in this congregation know something else. That longing is mutual. And those parents out there are waiting to adopt. They're waiting to find that child. There's people who want to parent the child. Every bit as much as we long for redemption and healing, there is a God who wants to give it. A God who is incomplete without us. Because what is a parent without a child? This is the deepest magic of what Paul is talking about. That just as there's something in us that belongs, it belongs to God. God is asking for it. God is asking for our praise, our service, our love, because God created us so that in freedom we would return to God. God didn't want robots. God didn't make us so we couldn't say no. But God knew that the greatest feeling, the greatest experience would be to have creatures who in full freedom said yes and brought themselves back to God. So in the end, there's this entire circle of longing and love. It includes all of creation. It includes God. So may that circle that consists of God and his people be unbroken. Amen.